It pulled up to the barn just as the last of the roof gave way. The collapse wasn't loud in the way you'd expect. It sagged first, beams folding inward like tired knees. Then the whole center dropped into itself with a low, rushing roar. Smoke rolled out in thick black waves and drifted across the pasture. By the time I stopped the truck, the fire had already eaten most of the structure. The outer frame still stood in places, warped and leaning, glowing along the edges. Through the broken doorway, I could see them. The livestock pressed against the side walls when the heat rose. Cows, pigs, one horse near the far corner. Bodies curled into themselves, legs tucked tight, eyes wide and fixed. They hadn't gotten out. Death had beaten us there. Holy Jesus, Daniel said quietly from behind me. His truck door creaked as he stepped out. I opened my door and the smell hit me first in the chest. Burning hay, charred wood, wet soil. Under it all, something metallic that made the back of my tongue sting. My stomach dropped as I looked at it. Fire had died down. It was only embers now, the occasional flame licking up and dying off. Thompson moved ahead of us, already pulling her gloves on, radio in hand. She crouched near the doorway where the frame had partially collapsed. "Everyone's dead?" she asked. Her voice sounded thin. I didn't answer right away. I was looking at the door. The latch had twisted when the wood burned through, but the lock was still there, melted, black, bent outward, and locked from the outside. My eyes moved past the doorway and down into the dirt where the morning dew still clung to the grass. There were footprints, one set, clear, leading away from the barn into the field. Deliberate spacing, calm steps. I swallowed. Yeah, all of them. Daniels rubbed a hand down his face and looked away from the doorway. Christ. Thompson ran her hand along one of the burned support posts. The wood crumbled under her glove. "But why lock them in?" she said. "You've seen barn fires, Jack. Bad wiring, haystacks, catching heat. But this isn't..." She didn't finish the sentence. I crouched beside the door and examined the latch closer. The metal was warped and bubbled where the heat had hit it, but the bend in the bracket wasn't from the fire. It had been forced before the flames got there. Somebody had locked it and damaged the lock to make sure that it stayed closed. Nothing got out, not a single animal. I stood and walked along the outside wall. My boots crunched over wet straw and brittle pieces of charcoal that used to be siding. Smoke drifted low across the ground, clinging to everything. The beams overhead creaked as the last of the heat worked through them. Inside, the embers glowed in pockets of dull red. They looked like eyes staring through the haze. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was the cold morning air, or the adrenaline, not the cruelty of all of it. Daniels coughed behind me. "Hey, Jack, look at this." He was crouched near the feed area where part of the wall had fallen inward. A feed sack lay there, half burned open. The paper had curled back from the heat, but the grain inside had spilled across the floor. In the dust around it were hoof prints, small ones, a goat or a young pig. They went toward the barn, then turned, then went back toward the fire again. Tight circles, panicked movement. But something about them looked wrong. Too neat, too contained, like the animal had been forced to stay in one place. "This wasn't chaos," Daniel said quietly. "No," I said. I stepped closer to the doorway and nudged something with the toe of my boot. A small key lay half buried in ash. The metal had blackened around the edges, but the teeth were still clear. It was house key size, nothing fancy. I picked it up. It would fit the padlock that had been on the barn door. Whoever locked the animals in hadn't taken it with them. They'd left it there, not hidden, just dropped. Almost like they wanted it found, like they wanted us to see it. Unit 12, Thompson said in her radio. Her voice trembled just enough to notice. Scene here is bad. Locked barn, all animals deceased. We've got footprints leading away into the east field. Static cracked through the speaker. Copy Unit 12, back up en route. I barely heard it. I was crouched near the dirt where the footprints started. I traced one carefully with my finger without touching the edge. Small boot, adult but narrow. The stride stayed even all the way around the barn. Whoever made them had walked the perimeter slowly, watching, waiting. The thought of someone standing out here while the animals inside screamed and burned made the back of my neck prickle. Daniel suddenly went still. Did you see that? I looked up. Near the tree line beyond the pasture, something had moved. A shape. It was quick, dark against the morning haze, then gone. The smoke drifting over the field swallowed it. It could be wind, I said. But my voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Wind doesn't step between trees. I walked the perimeter again, slower this time. Every beam, every hinge. The burn patterns weren't random. The fire had started in more than one place. Low along the back wall where the hay bales were stacked highest. Another near the feed trough. A third spot near the door. All of it designed to trap movement toward the center. Whoever did this had thought it through. This wasn't rage. It was planning. Daniel shifted behind me. Jack, what now? I kept looking at the ground. We document everything, I said. Tracks, walk, burn points. Then we find out who was here tonight. Thompson was crouched near the trough. Some of the animals had collapsed there. The heat had caught them before they made it halfway across the barn. She pointed to the wall. Look at these scorch marks, she said. The burn climbed the boards in uneven streaks where accelerant must have run down the wood. They started it low, she said. Multiple paces, fast spread. I nodded slowly and my stomach rolled again. I've worked plenty of fires, houses, cars, one warehouse job that burned for 2 days straight. You see bad things in those places, but this was different. Somebody had built this, engineered it. The quiet of the pasture made it worse. Then we heard footsteps, soft, out in the field behind the barn. All three of us froze. Daniel straightened slowly and turned toward the sound. Who's there? He called. His voice came out tighter than he meant it to. No one answered. Just the faint crackle of embers settling inside the barn. The slow hiss of wood cooling. I walked back toward the footprints. The sun had climbed higher now and the smoke was starting to thin, but the barn still looked wrong in the morning light. The beams twisted like fingers. The glowing embers stared out through the gaps. The footprints stretched away through the dew-covered grass, straight toward the tree line. Whoever made them had walked calmly away. No running, no hesitation, like they knew exactly how long the fire would take. I turned back to Daniels and Thompson. We need to stay sharp, I said. Daniels frowned. For what? This wasn't random, I said. I gestured toward the barn. This was a message. He looked back at the blackened frame. A message for who? I met his eyes. For us? I don't know. For anyone paying attention, I said. Thompson stood slowly. You think they'll do it again? I looked down the dirt road stretching past the pasture. 3 more farms sat along it within 5 miles. Old barns, same dry timber, same livestock, same isolation. Yeah, I said. I think they'll pick another one. We stood there a moment longer. Smoke curled upward in thin ribbons that drifted across the rising sun. From a distance, the barn almost looked like it was breathing. Thompson spoke again. Jack, you think we could have saved them? I shook my head slowly. No. I looked at the burned doorway, the lock, the key in my palm. Whoever did this made sure of that. We loaded back into the trucks a few minutes later. climbed in last. The smell of smoke clung to everything, my jacket, my hair, the inside of my lungs. As we drove down the dirt road, I looked back through the rear window. The barn sat in the distance like a black skeleton against the pale sky. The bodies inside wouldn't move. The footprints were already fading as the sun burned the dew away. But the path they made still pointed toward the trees, toward whoever had stood there watching the whole thing burn. I kept staring until the road curved and the barn disappeared. Then I faced forward again. "Not the last one," I said quietly, and I knew I was right.